we've been following a story that really started getting legs last week. The Texas Municipal League going around telling folks, telling counties and cities, hey, we're under an emergency declaration. That means, according to us, you can raise your taxes back up to like 8.2%, and you don't have to worry about it. That evil SB2 that was passed last Texas legislative session, where you had a 3.5% trigger on taxes, that's out the window. The governor responded last week, says that's not how he reads the law. The Texas Attorney General, who we had on last week, said they're reviewing it, and if they're asked for an official opinion, they'll issue that official opinion. The city of Dallas yesterday, I think they tried to take a swing at it, and they got caught taking a swing at raising taxes, and they decided against raising taxes by 8%. Joining us on the phones, I know they've been keeping up with this over at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. James Quintero once again joining us. James, good morning. Welcome back. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Chad. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I got to tell you, I'm a little bit surprised that the city of Dallas backed off this plan to raise taxes by 8%.
I am too. I'll be honest, and perhaps I've been following big liberal cities too closely for too many years, but I was just about darn certain that the city of Dallas was going to move ahead with this really silly plan to impose or to at least look at an 8% tax increase. It is the absolute wrong move in today's troubled times, and it's premised on some highly questionable interpretation of Senate Bill 2.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about this, because this is I set it up going into, last week, the Texas Municipal League, which, by the way, a lot of cities and counties, taxpayer money goes into the Texas Municipal League. And they've been going around and telling cities and counties that they can raise their taxes beyond the 3.5%, correct?
Yeah, so my arch nemesis, the Texas Municipal League, who has been a thorn in my side for a long time. They really have some bad ideas over there. What they've been advising cities is that the bill that was passed during the last legislative session, which installed these new taxpayer-friendly triggers, that lowered the threshold that you could raise property taxes from 8% to 3.5%. And we also were able to create an automatic trigger that said if you go over that 3.5% threshold, you have to go get voter permission. They said all of that has been set to the side because the governor has issued a statewide disaster declaration. Now, the bill authors, Chairman Burrows and Chairman Betancourt, have both said that their intent with the disaster language in Senate Bill 2 was to address damage or physical damage resulting from disasters, not economic damage that, in some ways is self-imposed. And so right now there's actually a battle brewing statewide between conservatives and liberals on whether or not these Senate Bill 2 restrictions are going to be in place for the next fiscal year. And, of course, we're coming up on the summer months when all of your jurisdictions are going to start doing their budgets and thinking about tax rates. And so this fight is only going to build over the next couple of months and really culminate in the fall.
Does the bill actually say physical damage, or does it talk about an emergency declaration outside of a drought? Because I know the drought was singled out and said, no, you can't do this in case there's a drought. Otherwise, you'd have Lubbock County and the city of Lubbock and a lot of places out here, James. They'd be excusing themselves from that 3.5% every single year. What does it actually read?
Sure. So the statutory language actually lists off several specific examples. And then it does include something of a catch-all phrase with other calamities. Now, again, but that was only intended to address physical damage that came out of a disaster, sure, not the economic kind.
Yeah, well, I guess does that, if you've got one side arguing that, hey, an emergency is an emergency, you've got the other side, and I understand where you're coming from and where Chairman Burrows and I think the governor is coming from here, which is, no, we intended that to be like for a hurricane or a tornado or something where you just have this huge damage that is out there. Who does it come down to? Does it come down to the AG's opinion?
Well, ultimately, I think it comes down to voters, right? So if you have your jurisdictions coming up with these wild ideas that they're going to impose an 8% tax increase, perhaps contrary to state law, you may see some litigation come into play. And by the way, TPPF has a very robust litigation operation, and this is absolutely on our radar. But ultimately, it's going to be up to voters, right? And I think you're starting to see some of that thought creep into your various local officials' minds, and that was very evident in the Dallas City Council fight last night. You know, this was not even a close fight last night. Again, Dallas isn't exactly a bastion of conservative thought, but even that city council was overwhelmingly opposed to the idea of simply looking at an 8% tax increase because they were going to incur some serious political damage. In fact, the vote was 12-3 last night. So just goes to show you how incredibly unpopular even thinking about going down this road is.
Well, and at least in Dallas, and it did. I mean, headlines started popping up about this a few days ago, and so I think people were able to get prepared. It's, you know, for me, what I'm concerned about is, you know, the cities that don't get a lot of publication, the cities that aren't covered as much, because you and I know there are a lot of cities that they're not going to get as highly pubbed as Dallas is, and that's where I think some of these cities and counties are going to be really sneaky, trying to get a higher tax rate through.
Well, I think you're right, and unfortunately, the Texas Municipal League has the ear of the vast majority of cities in this state. Again, this is a taxpayer-funded lobby institution that uses our money, our tax dollars, to effectively advocate against the taxpayer. It's one of the reasons that the Texas Public Policy Foundation is so heavily invested in the effort to end taxpayer-funded lobbying in the next legislative session. It's probably our number 1 or 2 item on our agenda. So I look forward to moving the ball on that particular item in addition to tax reform and tax relief. Yeah,
absolutely. James, I appreciate you joining us. Always appreciate the work that you guys do over at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And during the session, I'm sure, and before the session, we'll be visiting a lot. Then hopefully we'll be able to come and see you guys during the next legislative session again.
Well, perfect. We look forward to the opportunity, and I'm always happy to chat about taxes, one of my favorite issues.
Absolutely. James, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad.
That's James Quintero with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Remember, folks, we talked about this yesterday. You have got to stay on, whether it's the Lubbock City Council, whether it is the city of Dallas, Houston, whatever city you're listening in, you have got to be paying attention to what's going on, because we brought this up with Scott Braddock earlier in the week. There are cities and counties that are going to float this idea to bring in more money because they want more money. They don't care how much you have suffered. And let me tell you something: if they labeled you not essential during the pandemic, you're still going to be essential when it comes to the tax bill. You will still be labeled essential when it comes to taxes. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.